A showery picture on Thursday before a bit of a northwest-southeast split on Friday, wetter towards the northwest. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's our biggest Great British giveaway to date. You could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This 4-berth home from home comes complete with integrated kitchen and bathroom areas and has all of the tech you'd expect from the latest 2025 model. We'll also give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that any adventures you take in your new motorhome are taken in style. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight. Angela Rayner is back under the hypocrisy spotlight as more and more revelations of alleged tax dodging come to light. There is nothing wrong with wanting to pay less tax, but unlike small state advocates, the socialists love extolling the virtues of taking your money, so they should be paying it themselves. Also tonight.
I feel the hand of history upon our shoulder in respect of this. I really do.
The report says Britain's departure from the European Convention on Human Rights would not threaten peace in Northern Ireland, a view much espoused by those who want to keep us locked in. Has the last major argument for staying in the ECHR fallen? Plus,
the council taxpayer who's being ripped off, who is suffering the consequences.
Reform, Richard Tice promises to slash inefficient council spending, but the party is facing fire from all sides after His Grace the Archbishop of York branded Nigel Farage's immigration stance knee-jerk and the Prime Minister accused him of scaremongering. Is reform gearing up for the government or stuck in damage control? And could your rail ticket soon be spying on you? The government is trialling satellite-based pay-as-you-go in the East Midlands, apparently to tackle fare dodging. But is this another step towards a real-life sequel to 1984? State of the Nation starts now. also be joined by my most intellectual panel, the former Conservative MP and Minister, Sir John Redwood, and the former Labour MP, Stephen Pound. As always, I want to know your views. mailmog@gbnews.com. But now, it's your favourite time of the day, the News Bulletin with Sam Francis.
Jacob, thank you, and good evening to you. Just after 8 o'clock, well, the top story, the Home Secretary has promised today the biggest shake-up of Britain's borders in years. The first returns under a new treaty with France, she says, will begin later this month, alongside tougher language rules, expanded detention and a crackdown on smuggling gangs. Yvette Cooper says she's committed to fixing every aspect of the broken system that she claims Labour inherited from the Conservatives.
Solving problems, not exploiting them. A serious and comprehensive plan, not fantasy claims based on sums that don't add up or gimmicks that failed in the past. What we will never do is seek to stir up chaos, division or hate, because that is not who we are as a country, and that is not what Britain stands for.
Well, the Conservatives claimed that the government is failing to get a grip on small boats, and Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp said that Labour's decision to abandon the Rwanda plan has left Britain without a real deterrent.
If someone enters this country illegally, they should not be allowed to bring in any family members. In fact, everybody entering this country illegally should be immediately removed to their country of origin, if possible, and if not possible, to a safe third country such as Rwanda, a scheme which she cancelled just days before it was due to start.
Meanwhile, Keir Starmer is reshaping his Downing Street team, creating a brand new role at number 10. Labour's Darren Jones is moving from the Treasury to become Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, a job designed, in the words of officials, to turbocharge the government. Jones will be based in number 10, overseeing work across Whitehall to drive the Prime Minister's priorities. James Murray replaces him as Treasury Chief Secretary, while Dan Tomlinson becomes Exchequer Secretary. It follows Sir Keir's recent move to bring in Baroness Manucci Shafiq, the former Columbia University president, now his Chief Economic Advisor. The Conservatives are challenging Labour to rule out new property taxes, forcing a Commons vote ahead of the budget. Chancellor Rachel Reeves is under growing pressure to plug a gap in the public finances, with sluggish growth and higher borrowing costs putting on the strain. Options reportedly on the table include scrapping capital gains tax relief on expensive homes or tightening inheritance tax rules. The vote's expected on Wednesday of this week, with opposition leader Kemi Badenoch telling us that ministers must come clean on their plans.
We need the government to be honest with people. They have been making a lot of noise about black holes. The truth is, they're the ones who created a black hole with their budget last year. They tax businesses who have shed loads of jobs. Unemployment has been rising every single month since Labour came into power. The economy is doing really badly under them, and now they're coming back for more. So we need them to be honest, and that is what the vote on Wednesday is about. Labour telling us exactly what it is they're going to do, but we're the only party that will defend home ownership.
Queen Camilla has revealed that she once fought off a man who tried to indecently assault her on a train as a teenager. According to a new book, Power and the Palace, the Queen told Boris Johnson that the incident happened when she was about 16 or 17, or travelling to Paddington. She said she hit the man with her shoe before reporting him to police. Camilla has since become a long-standing campaigner against sexual abuse and domestic violence, pledging just last year that she would keep trying to end it. And the UK has recorded its hottest summer on record, the Met Office has confirmed. Average temperatures across July, June and August hit 16.1 degrees, beating the previous high set in 2018. It also follows the warmest spring since records began, with months of hot and dry weather leading to hosepipe bans and falling reservoir levels. In fact, all of the 5 last hottest summers have now happened since the year 2000. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you for an update at 9. Now, though, it's over to Jacob.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. Tax avoidance is perfectly legal. Tax evasion is illegal. As the great Lord Clyde said, no man in the country is under the smallest obligation, moral or other, so to arrange his legal relations to his business or property as to enable the Inland Revenue to put the largest possible shovel in his stores. A view I completely agree with. We shouldn't let the Inland Revenue, or HMRC as it now is, put a shovel in our stores. And no Tory ought ever to be ashamed of minimising his tax liability. But socialists follow a different creed. This is why Angela Rayner is under the spotlight again. This time it's stamp duty and council tax. The Deputy Prime Minister is facing scrutiny after buying a new property in Hove worth £800,000, paying around £30,000 in stamp duty. But in January, before making the purchase, Ms Rayner may have removed her name from the deeds of her £650,000 Ashton family house, avoiding a second home surcharge of up to £40,000. So Ms Rayner said on Friday she's now divorced from her ex-husband with whom she bought the property, and transferring legal ownership of the family home to her ex-husband and a trust for their children meant that she no longer owned another property, resulting in a significantly lower stamp duty bill. Indeed, it's absolutely brilliant. It seems to be one of the most successful tax planning operations I've recently heard of, and that's, of course, something I support. Not only has Angela Rayner minimised the stamp duty payable, but she's maximised the death duty allowance on the transfer to her children. If she pays market value to rent the house as her constituency property, there will be no GROB, which is the tax accountant jargon for a gift with reservation of benefit, and therefore it's out of her estate for death duties. Ms Rayner, of course, insists that all her affairs have been conducted properly and within the rules. And that's great. That's the law of the land. But she's a socialist who supports higher taxes for all the rest of us. There's nothing wrong with people wanting to keep their own money. Most viewers of GB News do. There's nothing wrong with wanting to ensure the money you earn is spent on what you choose, not what the government chooses. However, the difference is Angela Rayner and the government she serves represent an ideology that wants to tax you more. Indeed, her desire for higher taxation was leaked earlier this year. In May, she lobbied the Chancellor to increase property taxes, increase stamp duty and tighten inheritance tax. A hat-trick of taxes which she herself is so adroitly avoiding. Ms Reeves herself likes raising taxes too. Just look at what happened earlier when the Chancellor posted a video of her talking to school children about their plan for change. Observe her reaction to being asked about taxation.
I've been hearing about you in the news that you like taxes.
Well, she looks as if she's been offered sweets, Fox's Glacier fruits or something like that. The excitement is palpable. And there's nothing objectionable about wanting the government to take as little of your money as possible. But when you are part of the government which wants to take people's money, the hypocrisy is impossible to defend. As ever, let me know what you think. mailmog@gbnews.com. But I'm joined now by my most intellectual panel, the former Conservative MP and Minister, Sir John Redwood, and the former Labour MP, Stephen Pound. Stephen, let me come to you first, because actually I think Angela Rayner is a charismatic, capable force, is a good face of this government. But you really can't be advising the Chancellor to raise taxes in areas which you are then minimising your tax in,
well,
can
hang
you?
on a second. Yeah, she wasn't advising the Chancellor. She came up with it's this thing that they had back in May, with sort of brains trust operation. I think about 20 different ideas. They're just looking at different options. But look, I think your point about Lord Clyde, and I have to say it's marvellous how Lord Clyde mentioned on you. I just think of Ken Dodd saying that he didn't pay taxes because he didn't think the Inland Revenue applied because he lived on the coast, which I think is quite a good idea. But look, the optics on the Angela Rayner thing are tricky. There's a couple of things. Firstly, the valuation of her house up in her constituency is precisely, by glorious coincidence, exactly at the right level to avoid paying that additional tax. Secondly, there's the issue of should a person live in their constituency? At the moment, she's saying her principal home is in Hove, but she's got the Grace and Favour place, which John Prescott had, and many Tory ministers have had in Admiralty or in similar places. So should she be living there or not? And I think what kind of sums it up in the eyes of the public is a cartoon in one of the papers today, which showed her in a greenhouse throwing a stone through the glass.
Yet the Labour Party used to attack people for owning lots of houses. When Alec Douglas Hume stood for Parliament, when he became Prime Minister, he was asked would he live in his constituency. And he said, no, I've got enough houses already. And he was mocked by Harold Wilson for this.
I mean, Michael Meacher, if you remember, who was Tony Benn's agent on Earth, I mean, he actually owned 13 houses. And it didn't stop him being, an absolute red-hot frothing socialist. But, look, I mean, I think we're not talking about a huge number of houses. We're talking about a property she had, which she bought in her constituency in Ashton-under-Lyme. She's talking about the Grace and Favour place, which is the same as Downing Street, to a certain extent, and this place she's bought in Hove. And I think that what we're talking about, and you're absolutely right, and it's very decent of you to point out that this is completely within the law, but it does have a whiff about it, and I think that's what worries me. And I think she does need to do more than simply say everything was done according to law. I think she needs to actually justify it and actually fight her corner. And believe you me, she's pretty good at fighting her corner.
She's good at fighting her corner. But from our point of view, it is fair for people to minimise their taxation. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with tax avoidance. Tax evasion is a different matter. It's criminal. And it's important to make that differentiation. But if you're calling for everybody else to pay higher taxes and you then conveniently get £650,000 and you do it a few months before you buy a second property, it doesn't look right, does it?
No, this is clearly hypocrisy, and you've put it extremely well. But there's the issue of whether there's more than that. Now, I think in order to clear this all up and get it off the front pages, Angela Rayner owes herself and the nation a statement of what she actually has done. Because we don't know, for example, which is her primary residence for council tax purposes. It would be interesting to know, and is that the same as the primary residence for stamp duty purposes? And I think most of us feel that if you are in the luxury position of having more than one home, there are some basic rules that you might apply to define what is your primary residence, and surely it is the place where you spend most nights of the year rather than the secondary place. It's probably where you register with the GP. It's where your children go to school, unless the children are now being looked after entirely by the other parent. And it's the place where you spend a lot of time. And is that true? And I think she needs to persuade us that if the Hove one is now the primary residence, that is true.
But it's quite sophisticated tax planning as well, isn't it? To put the Ashton property into the name of the children, carry on using it. That means you can buy a second property as your first property and save the council tax on that. This isn't...
Well, and indeed, I mean, a Conservative government legislated to say that people were under a duty to explain to the revenue how they were playing the rules, because the revenue then got the right to say, well, actually, that's too an extreme interpretation of the rules, and we don't actually agree with that. And I think a Labour minister who would have certainly supported that legislation and wants to go further needs to think very carefully before using those kind of arrangements.
What would you expect her to do to explain the situation? There's a story that she can't say anything about it because it's subject to a court order. But as she's a Member of Parliament, she could make a personal statement in the House of Commons which is exempt from all of that and could explain every detail if she wanted to.
Of course she could. But, I mean, every single politician since the dawn of time who's been accused of something like this has actually recused themselves from making a statement on the floor of the House. Once you get into that situation, then it really does become incredibly intrusive, and I think it's very, very difficult. I think what she needs to do...
but she doesn't have to answer questions. She just makes personal statements.
There's a couple of basic questions, where she registered to vote and, which is the primary residence. But as far as I'm aware, she has actually stated that.
You can be registered to vote in more than one place.
So that's as long as you don't actually vote there.
And you raise the interesting question of should your main residence be in your constituency? Now, I think that's up to constituents, that if they want to vote for somebody who's main registered...
Well, and up to the MP. I mean, and some... I mean, it's normal for an MP just to have somewhere in London and somewhere in the constituency, unless they're a London MP. And then they've got to make a difficult choice. Do they want to say, well, I'm going to spend much more time in the constituency, or is in practice London going to be very dominant? And that's a difficult call, and you would have just got to be clear with people.
It wasn't utterly ridiculous.
And the tax authorities.
The situation was ludicrous. I mean, I was an MP in Ealing, which is, about 12 miles from here, and yet I still treasure a letter which I had pinned on my office wall from somebody saying, I've been perusing the Telegraph, and I see that you could have claimed £23,840 a year for a second home, and yet you chose not to do so. What sort of an idiot are you? But basically, I was a semi-honest idiot. But the idea that somebody living in Ealing, which takes 3/4 of an hour to get in here, could have claimed for a home, it was farcical. And I'm glad we stopped all that. But the more interesting, almost, if I dare say, philosophical question is the business about, is it fair to your family to actually have them living in your constituency? My children suffered. My kids were 8 and 6 then when I first got elected. So they went right through their primary and high school period. And it could be pretty grim sometimes, but that's not the issue here. The issue here is...
But one of the issues here is, I mean, as a busy minister, as you were, I split my time between London and the constituency home. I couldn't have found time to go to a third place 100 miles away.
Now, that is quite interesting. What does that tell you about her political ambitions? Because there was a story she'd be thinking of moving down south, where there may be more safe Labour seats at the next election.
Who knows what safe Labour seats are going to be at the next... Who knows what safe Conservative seats are going to be?
Well, if Angela would like to come on GB News, State of the Nation, to explain all of this, she would be very welcome. Standing invitation. So, thank you very much to Stephen and John. Coming up in just a moment...
I feel the hand of history upon our shoulder in respect to this. I really do.
Gosh, she's such an old humbug. Anyway, a new report says Britain's departure from the European Convention on Human Rights would not threaten peace in Northern Ireland, a view much espoused by those who want to keep us locked in. Has the last major argument for staying in the ECHR fallen away?
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters. Real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, you're joining us here this afternoon in the Fylde Memorial Arboretum and Community Woodland, and you can probably notice behind me that things perhaps aren't as big or as grand as they might be at the National Memorial Arboretum, but the sentiment here is just as special and just as big, as people here in this community today have gathered to mark 80 years of VJ Day. And we're in this part of the community woodland that is dedicated to all those people from Blackpool and the surrounding Fylde area that received the Burma Star, and each of those people commemorated here with their own individual plaque. And you can see on them, perhaps laying today, are yellow, white and green flowers, and that is because those are the colours of the Burma Star Association. So very, very specific and very, very poignant on this day. And at the centre of it all here in this particular part of the garden, you'll notice this lovely obelisk which holds on it the Kohima, which I'll read to you now. When you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow, we gave our today. And that, of course, is a reference to the incredible sacrifice made by all those who served. I actually got the opportunity to speak to a 102-year-old Army veteran who remembers VJ Day.
I was in the Army and we were all doing our usual jobs, and then we found out that it was time to all have a rejoicing time.
And I imagine you must have felt some real sense of relief.
Oh yes, definitely. Everybody knew that they'd be going home soon, and that life, we hoped, would be better for everybody.
GB News, the People's Channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back. Well, I'm still Jacob Rees-Mogg, and we were discussing tax avoidance, and the mail mogs have come in. Alan says, Taxes, the private sector creates the tax and wealth used to support public services, and those who do not contribute, the public sector spends it. Quite right. And Graham says Andrew Rayner's antics are a perfect lesson to Labour as to exactly why ramping up taxes won't result in more money for the government to spend. Oh, you are quite right, Graham, because people change their behaviour. The prospect of leaving the European Convention on Human Rights is one that is looking more and more realistic. Reform has made it a manifesto promise, and even the shadow Northern Ireland Secretary, Alex Burkhardt, said this weekend that the Tories would be willing to do so if necessary. But one of the arguments, one of the obstacles used by people who want to stay in this supranational, unelected body is that the risk leaving would pose to peace in Northern Ireland. Today, a new report shows that leaving the ECHR would not pose a risk to the Good Friday Agreement, a conclusion backed by the highly esteemed former Labour Home Secretary, Jack Straw. Has the argument for staying in the ECHR lost its final stake? Well, I'm very pleased now to be joined by the former First Minister of Northern Ireland, Baroness Foster, and my most intellectual panel, John Redwood and Stephen Pound. Arlene, thank you very much for coming in. This is absolutely crucial because particularly a lot of my Conservative friends who have realised that the ECHR isn't working would say, we would like to leave it, but we daren't risk Northern Ireland. Do you agree with this policy exchange report and think that actually the Northern Ireland peace settlement would be robust even without the ECHR?
So I think Policy Exchange have done a really good job in this because up until now it's almost become an article of faith that we can't leave the ECHR because it'll impact on the Belfast Agreement. And what they've done is go through quite forensically each of the parts of the Belfast Agreement, because the Belfast Agreement isn't just one agreement. It's actually a multi-party agreement, and then you have the international agreement between the British and Irish governments. And of course the Belfast Agreement has been changed numerous times since 1998 through the Stormont House Agreement, through the Hillsborough Agreement, a whole range of agreements. About 5 or 6 times it has been changed. So the argument, first of all, is you can't change the Belfast Agreement. Well, patently that's not true. And then this document today is saying there is nothing in the original documents that prevent the ECHR from being repealed right across the United Kingdom, i.e. in Northern Ireland as well as the rest of the UK.
OK, so that's very important. I suppose the first bit is that any change to the Belfast Agreement requires the consent of the parties.
Yes.
And that if there was something in it that you needed to change, you couldn't expect to get the consent from the Irish government or from the Republican element in Northern Ireland.
So I think that's the next stage, but the first stage has always been argued that you cannot change the Belfast Agreement and that you can't do it because it's critical, the ECHR is critical to the underpinning, I've heard said today, of the Belfast Agreement, and that's patently not the case, and that has been shown to be not the case. The next stage, of course, would then be having the conversations with the other parties, having the conversations with the Irish government, but of course, interestingly, in the international part of the Belfast Agreement, the agreement between the British and Irish government, it doesn't mention the ECHR. The ECHR is only referenced in the multi-party agreement.
And that's the multi-party agreement that is a
between
UK
the different parties.
Tax.
Yes, it is a UK
tax. It requires the European Convention to be effective within UK law in Northern Ireland?
Yes, so essentially what it's saying is that it's a benchmark for human rights and protections and equality. And Stephen will well remember that at the time of the Belfast Agreement, there were a lot of concerns about equality and about the rights of people. And the way in which they dealt with that is by saying, well, we'll incorporate the ECHR into the Belfast Agreement. But it's not prescriptive, it's descriptive, and it's not to be there for perpetuity, so it can be changed.
So that's really important, that it's not prescriptive, it's descriptive.
Yes.
So you could have something else that protected rights in Northern Ireland.
And I think everybody's saying that. I mean, nobody's suggesting that there won't be some protection for rights and for equalities in Northern Ireland. Nobody's saying that at all. But what they're saying is, because of the way in which the ECHR has developed, went way beyond its mandate, way beyond the interpretation as it was understood, there is a need to take stock and don't use Northern Ireland and the Belfast Agreement as a reason to stop that debate and have those arguments. I think that's what this paper does today, and that's why it's very welcome to the debate.
Stephen, let me bring you in, because obviously you were a shadow Northern Ireland spokesman, you know the issue very well. Isn't this very important, that the document that was agreed and the ECHR that was agreed at the time is a very different understanding of the ECHR from the one today. There's been a significant evolution with the judge's belief in it being a living document.
The basic document still stands. There has been Hillsborough, there has been Stonehouse, there's been any number of amendments since, because things change, as you know, particularly since leaving the European Union. But look, I think it's very, very important to say the ECHR was written and codified by British lawyers to actually bring into European law what we had in British law already. In British law, you could do what you want as long as it wasn't against the law. Whereas under the Napoleonic Code, you could only do what the law said you could. Now, the real thing is, I mean, Arlene, dear God, knows more than anybody on earth about this. The minute you try to amend one jot or tittle of any document, I'm sorry, in Northern Ireland, then it is a recipe for disaster, because it will just go on and on. Because, look, there's not unanimity. There has to be, don't forget, if you remember the agony, all those, back in Easter, at the time of the Good Friday Belfast Agreement, if we had to get everybody, had these proximity talks, talking to people in one room and then the other, had to get everybody to agree with it. Can you honestly imagine Jim Allister and traditional Ulster Boys and the Shinners sitting down and agreeing to this document? That, I think...
Well, look, if you take that to its logical conclusion, you'd never have any negotiations in Northern Ireland.
We've done it. We've done it.
No, that is not correct, Stephen. We've had numerous changes. You remember the St Andrews Agreement of 2006.
Very well, we were there.
Yes, exactly. And people said, oh, it's not going to go anywhere, we're not going to be able to agree. And we got an agreement, and we got devolution. It was a most successful devolution for many years. We had the Hillsborough Agreement, which was about the devolution of policing and justice. Who ever thought we would have policing and justice devolved to a minister, a local minister in Northern Ireland? But it happened. So I think the context is very important. And what we're saying is, if we want to have this debate about the ECHR across the UK, don't use Northern Ireland as a reason why we can't do it. That's
well, the
what the paper says.
ECHR has been used by the Republicans and by the European Union and by America under Biden to give a very bad settlement to Northern Ireland. And I and a group of Conservative MPs, as Arlene knows, worked away in the last Parliament. We took advice on all this. It was exactly the same as you've given us today. We were quite satisfied the ECHR was not an obstacle to changes in the direction that Northern Ireland wanted and the Unionist community quite rightly wanted. And the sad truth was that they broke the spirit, if not the letter of the agreement, because it was meant to be about the two communities coming together in agreement on big issues. And your community had no right over the Windsor Framework and the dreadful deal that was served up to Northern Ireland. And they just railroaded that through with the help of the United States of America. And of course, the new president comes in.
That's a very good example of the government showing its parliamentary sovereignty over Northern Ireland and saying, well, we're doing this for the greater good, even though those of us in Northern Ireland knew it would lead to what we have now. And that's really difficult issues around trade and having trade diversion through the Republic of Ireland.
It's a disgrace, and it's not in the UK's interest, and it's certainly not in Northern Ireland's interest.
Arlene has actually mentioned the North-South dimension to this, and this is particularly significant. You've got to see what Dublin are actually saying about this at the moment. Now, they're being actually quite circumspect at the moment, but there have been quite a few things that have been coming up, which you've probably seen as I've had on RTE and in the Irish press, where they actually see this almost as tearing up the Good Friday Agreement. Now, I understand that people will actually play this dramatic card, particularly with elections and particularly with the rise of Sinn Féin. However, we cannot ignore Dublin on this, much as we'd like to.
No, and I'm not suggesting for a second that we do, because there is an international part to the Belfast Agreement. But what I'm saying is, with this document that has come forward from Policy Exchange, it's confirming what some of us knew already, but the document is saying that we shouldn't use the Belfast Agreement to have the conversations with Dublin, with the parties in Belfast, right across the United Kingdom, because this should not be used to stop those conversations taking place.
But when it comes to borders issues as well, I mean, I think the Republic of Ireland now has got big problems with immigration, just as we have, and so it's much in their interest that the UK does resolve its border issue and doesn't allow Northern Ireland to get in the way of resolving the border issue.
And I think, Stephen, when you have people as significant as Jack Straw recognising that there are difficulties here, and there needs to be something done about all of this. I mean, he's suggesting looking at the ECHR in terms of immigration to deal with it. I mean, personally, I would like to see the ECHR suspended in connection with immigration, and then let's have a longer conversation about the whole of the ECHR. And I think that is the critical point in this, because Labour is facing a crisis around this whole issue.
Let's not disagree on that. But if there's one thing that has actually shivered down my spine, it's anybody from Northern Ireland saying, let's have a long conversation conversation about this. I mean, God love you.
You want to come over to us again, I know you do.
I feel like I've never left. But don't forget, most of the ECHR is not mandatory on British law. You know, we have to take cognizance of it. You know, we don't have to do it. And I think the problem we have at the moment, and I have to say, we probably get a degree of agreement about this, it's British judges and British juries interpreting it in their own way. And I think that's where the government cannot mandate a jury.
And that's why Parliament has to guide them in how they interpret
it. Can we all agree on that? Can we have a degree of unanimity on that?
Well, certainly what we want to see is Parliament, where people are elected to Parliament, to make the rules that govern the whole of the United Kingdom. That's what I want to see happening, and I think it's what people want to see happening on the ground too.
Well, I think we all agree with that. They have an end point of agreement between Arlene and my most intellectual panel, so thank you very much. In a moment, could your rail ticket soon be spying on you? The government is trialling satellite-based pay-as-you-go in the East Midlands, apparently to tackle fare dodging. But is this another step towards a real-life sequel to 1984?
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. It's remaining unsettled across parts of Central Europe as we go for the next few days. Either side, plenty of dry and sunny weather to be had. There could be a few showers on Tuesday across parts of the Canaries, but still plenty of dry and fine weather to be had. And for much of Iberia, actually plenty of sunshine around. But then we come back into the risk of some severe thunderstorms across parts of Italy and southern France. But then for much of Greece and Turkey, it's back to the sunshine with temperatures in places here reaching the low 30s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello again, very good evening to you. This is your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now, the generally unsettled theme will continue as we go through the rest of today, overnight into tomorrow. Lots more showers to come, even a spell of more persistent rain in the south because there is a front that's pushing its way in from the Atlantic. But generally the story is a low pressure firmly in charge, and this will continue to drive some showers in, particularly across northern and western parts as we go overnight. Elsewhere, something a little bit drier and clearer, and under those clear skies, it could be a little bit cooler than it was last night, whilst towns and cities are generally going to hold up in double figures. A few rural spots likely to drop into single digits. And then through tomorrow, well, a big talking point will be the more persistent rain across southern parts. So Devon, Cornwall getting off to a cloudy start, some heavy bursts of rain as this front makes its way in, even across some parts of South Wales. But further east, a drier story, albeit a few showers towards the coast. Also coastal showers for parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England, and also large chunks of Scotland. The showers across Scotland are likely to be heaviest, most frequent in the west, and they could be thundery here. Elsewhere, the showers not as frequent, not as widespread as those that we saw today, and less likely to be heavy, less likely to be thundery. But across southern areas, we do have that frontal system making its way further east, so some rain for many, and it could be quite heavy. There could be some thunder mixed in with it as well. Temperatures are going to be similar to today. We're looking at high teens, low 20s, so feeling warm enough in any sunny breaks, but less so in the unsettled weather. Talking of unsettled weather, Wednesday's looking pretty wet, and it could be quite windy as a spell of rain makes its way across much of the country. Perhaps western Scotland avoiding this and staying largely fine. And then a showery picture on Thursday before a bit of a northwest-southeast split on Friday, wetter towards the northwest. Bye-bye.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Could your railway ticket soon be spying on you? The government is trialling a new pay-as-you-go ticketing system in the East Midlands using satellite technology to track passengers in real time. Passengers check in on their telephone, are tracked throughout their journey, and at the end of the day, the app bills them for the, quote, best fare. If you believe that, you believe anything. The Rail Minister, Lord Hendy, says Labour is modernising ticketing and making it simpler and easier for people to choose rail. But is this another step towards a surveillance state? Joining me now is the Director of Public Affairs at the Adam Smith Institute, Maxwell Marlowe, and my panel, the former Conservative MP and Minister, Sir John Redwood, and the Labour MP, Stephen Pound. Maxwell, thank you very much for coming in. Isn't this just easy? And we can get on the train and be charged the best price, all the discounts applied, and they know we're travelling on the train anyway because we've had to buy a ticket, and it's not that big an intrusion on our freedom?
It's a total nonsense, really. I mean, they're trialling this in Scotland, they're trialling it in Switzerland, but I don't see the need for it. At the moment, the system works quite well, apart from those fare dodgers, and that's why the system is being brought in, or at least trialled them in the West Midlands. What I see an issue here with, though, fundamentally, Jacob, is the fact the government is so incompetent at keeping hold of our data that, A, there'll probably be a ginormous data leak of GDPR breaking consequences, or it could be used to ransom, or, as you're intimating, it could be used as a surveillance system. And that is what I find really uncomfortable about this, fundamentally.
They follow us anyway just by the signals that our telephones emit. If they want to bother, and we've all watched those Hollywood films where they track baddies, and even sometimes goodies using their telephone signals. And that technology exists if the government can be bothered to use it.
Surely that is the case. But have you tried using the Wi-Fi on the train at any one point? I mean, I'm from Crewe. I'm a crewman. I'm a railwayman. Try going up to Crewe and getting a good signal all the way through. That is more difficult. And what I find really strange about this proposal is that there's no market demand for it, because at the moment when you scan in on a train, you have to book ahead in advance, and then you sort of use your QR code, you go through, that's all fine. The big issue, though, with this fundamentally is how do you know it's going to be the best ticket? So sometimes if I go through Crewe, for example, if I'm going up further north, I know which trains give me the best because, I've looked ahead, I've booked it in advance. How do I trust the rail companies, or do I trust the government to give me the best price?
Well, you'd be bonkers to trust either the government or the train companies.
Exactly.
Both of them would fiddle you given half a chance.
Exactly. So this is my problem. I don't want to put my trust in the government. I put the trust in myself.
In your own ability.
Of course.
Also, I don't get how it stops fare dodgers. If I'm going to jump over the barrier, get on a train, hide in the loo when the ticket inspector comes round, the fact I'm being tracked on my mobile, which I may have switched off, isn't going to stop me fare dodging. So the determined criminal just ignores this anyway.
Of course. Speak to Robert Jenrick about this problem, of course. I mean, he can film them on his phone, do a great video. What will British Transport Police do? Nothing. What will the train companies do? Absolutely nothing either. This is really, I think, just a method to screw over the middle classes who want to get to work on time, go and see their families, go on holiday maybe, in beautiful places like Somerset, maybe like the Lake District. I don't trust this one bit. I think this is a really pernicious scheme which could undo quite a lot of good faith.
What a powerful case for bringing the entire network into public ownership so we can have standardised...
Well, that will guarantee us.
No, I'm interested in Peter. Peter Hendy... Cast your mind back to Chiswick Depot in the late 1960s when two young London Transport bus drivers were going through the training programme. Peter Hendy and myself were on the same intake there. And I didn't realise later on that, I was a sort of ex-forces one, but he was, in fact, a management trainee. But look, at the moment, I mean, my marvellous Freedom Pass, which is a very handy... You could actually download enough information from this to know exactly where I am at any particular time. You could track me down. Heavens, my wife could track me down, with these. So we've got all that. But the idea... Unless you've got a death ray which is generated by this, it's not going to stop people leaping over the barriers. It's absolutely bonkers. Now, we need to have what we call revenue protection officers on the trains. Now, what I can't understand, due respect to my former colleague from Chiswick Works, what is actually really behind this? Because the idea that it's going to give people best value, you've answered that beautifully. The idea it's going to actually prevent people from fare dodging, I'm sorry, I don't see it. I just simply don't see it.
John, it's going to fall to you to make the case for this scheme.
Come on.
Why would I do that?
All the rest of us seem to be against it.
Nationalised railway is obviously going to be even worse at controlling fare dodging than the privatised one that preceded it, because they don't seem to be very interested in controlling it. I agree with all that you've said, that I can't see how making people use their mobile phones would suddenly avoid fare dodging. I mean, what happens when your battery's gone flat, or you turned it off, or you're somebody who doesn't believe in mobile phones. At the moment, you are allowed to have a paper version or a physical ticket or whatever.
A mag strip, I believe it's known.
And obviously the best way of controlling fare dodging
dodgy to me.
is not only to have the automatic barriers at both ends so that you've got a register going on and getting off again, but to have somebody watching those barriers so that if somebody does do the leaping or the following the first person through without paying, they are immediately intercepted. And that was what Robert Jenrick highlighted. He said, look, we can all see this going on. There are half a dozen staff paid to deal with this, and nobody's budging an inch.
And Max, one of the other things that surprised me is that if you buy a ticket, you know what you've paid for it in advance. With this system, if it's giving you the best price, you won't actually know what you've got to pay until after you've arrived, which with the variability on train tickets could be a very, very significant difference.
Absolutely. It's kind of like walking into a restaurant and being hit with the service charge at the end. You don't know what on earth you've been struck with. And I think this is why the security of booking ahead is really important. Sometimes I have to miss trains to go up north because I don't want to get the really fast train, which would cost me £200, £300. I want to get the slow train, cost me 40, 50. That's fine, right? But if you're stuck on the system, how do you know what on earth you're going to be hit with at the end? I mean, the government, who is so looking for revenue at the moment, especially because the cuts coming forward when it comes to Department of Transport, they could hit you with anything. I think it's a serious, serious issue.
The spread between the cheap and the dear tickets is so enormous. There isn't really logic behind it. And now I learn that in Scotland they've suddenly magicked a load of money up so they can get rid of the dear. How are they going to do that? And is that British taxpayers going to pay for it?
Almost certainly. It's about time we started playing the Flanders and Swan song, The Slow Train, which visited Midsummer Norton, among other places. Anyway, thank you, Maxwell.
I wanted to go to Birmingham, but they put me off at Crewe.
Shortly.
It's the council taxpayer who's being ripped off, who is suffering the consequences.
The Deputy Leader of Reform, Richard Tice, promises to slash inefficient council spending, but the party's facing fire from all sides after His Grace, the Archbishop of York, branded Nigel Farage's immigration stance knee-jerk, and the Prime Minister accused him of scaremongering. Is Reform gearing up for government or stuck in damage control?
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken, How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Reform is making the headlines again. Today, Deputy Leader Richard Tice told the media a reform government would slash inefficient local government expenditure, particularly on pensions.
What we are seeing is a gravy train culture in the local government pension schemes of overcharging with no responsibility, of underperformance with no accountability whatsoever. And it's the council taxpayer who's being ripped off, who is suffering the consequences.
Also this week, His Grace the Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell, took aim at Nigel Farage, accusing him of a knee-jerk, ineffective approach to immigration. And now, I bet they're terrified by this, the Prime Minister has accused the Reform leader of scaremongering over the state of the country. So is Reform preparing for government or in a perpetual cycle of damage control? I'm very pleased to be joined now by Reform's head of the Doge unit, Zia Youssef. Zia, thank you for joining me. This is very much your area that Richard Tice has been talking about, saving money in local councils. But the pension funds are there to be well invested and raise money to pay the pensioners. Where are the savings there, do you think?
Well, what the team have discovered, what Richard brilliantly articulated today, is a huge amount of money, taxpayer money, being invested, well, it's pensioners' money being invested in these funds that, number one, have massively underperformed any reasonable benchmark. So firstly, these are active funds, and there's a fund manager making decisions about where the money goes as opposed to the passive trackers. And what's really interesting is a lot of the money has been invested in these green funds, in the eco funds and the ESG funds. And so, one, they're massively underperforming. That's a problem for the pensioners. It's a problem for the taxpayer, who then has to plug the hole, of course. Number two, those active managers, instead of being penalized for that bad performance, as one might expect, have been making hay with bumper fees. So it's pay for non-performance, as is often the case when government decisions are made in this way. So you're seeing the best of all worlds. Pensioners are losing out. The value of their investments is not rising as fast as it should. You're seeing a lot of that money go into these green projects. And by the way, I want to make this point too. Whenever Reform talk about the enormous savings that we made when Nigel as Prime Minister scraps these net zero targets, gets rid of all of this enshrinement that's in law currently, we're told, oh, you're massively overstating. You're massively overstating the cost of net zero. No, we're massively understating it. We've just shown another example here of billions of pounds of taxpayer money that is just being lost as a result of this crazy religious obsession with net zero. And the amounts that have been found here are not small. We're talking about 10 billion in the councils that we're talking about. And if you were to scale this up, so if you assumed that this was the case writ large across the country, which is a very reasonable assumption, Jacob, you are talking about tens of billions. You're talking about almost as much as the national defence budget. So we are often told that there's no money wasted. You're not going to find anything, and we are just decisively proving that wrong already.
OK, I mean, I'm a former investment manager. That was my business before politics rather took over. And it's always easy to see where investment management decisions were wrong in the past. It's very difficult to promise better investment management decisions in the future. I agree with you about ESG. I've always been very suspicious of it. But how do you make certain that you get better returns in future? What would your policy be?
Well, no offence intended to you as someone who is an active fund manager, but the reality is, Jacob, any reasonable person who looks at the performance of passive tracker funds, net of fees, because those passive funds are naturally much cheaper as well and don't charge those fees. They've just performed a hell of a lot better. For you to have chosen an active fund that outperforms the passive trackers, you need to be extraordinarily lucky. I think it's 80-90% of the active funds underperform. So it's actually a relatively straightforward commitment for us to make, which is that these will go into passive funds. Remember, Jacob, we're talking about one part of the problem. If there was an active manager making a lot of money for pensioners in Britain, doing great value for the taxpayer, everyone at Reform would be hats off to that man or woman, they should be paid handsomely. The opposite is happening. They're earning fat performance fees for catastrophic underperformance.
And what about the other criticisms you're facing? So the Archbishop of York thinks it's a knee-jerk reaction. Does this upset you that you're being attacked by the acting head of the state church?
We've got great respect for the church, and I'd echo what Richard said at the press conference, which is perhaps a better use of that time and energy would be on increasing the size of the congregations. I mean, there's a lot of appetite. There's a real appetite for religion once again, particularly amongst young people in this country. But we make no apologies. As you know, we're in the world of politics. We are here to listen to voters, Jacob. And I know you spent a lot of time doing this too. If you don't listen to voters, then the country's going to go down a very, very dark path indeed. And I don't think anyone, including and especially the Archbishop, would want that.
And the Prime Minister thinks that you're talking down Britain, and I suppose in a way you are. I mean, there's a feeling of gloom about this country. What's your response to that? How do you cheer everybody up?
Come to our conference, 5th and 6th. It's this week, Jacob.
I may be popping along. I think I'm doing an event with the Prosperity Institute on the Saturday. So assuming that's all confirmed, I may bump into you there. And I have a feeling my daughter Mary wants to come with me. So I may see you then, and we'll try and cheer everybody up, but with good Conservative policies that I will be advocating.
You would always be welcome. You will get a great warm reception there. But look, the reality is it's going to be a hugely optimistic, bright, effervescent atmosphere. People at Reform are simultaneously the most clear-eyed about the challenges this country faces, but also the most optimistic about how incredible this country can be. We're all very, very optimistic about how if we just took the brakes off, if we stopped having politicians who actively harmed this country, harmed the British people, that alone would go a long way towards turning it around. And what people see, Jacob, what people want to see most of all in their day-to-day lives is things to just stop getting worse and for them to see some bright sunshine through the clouds.
Well, they need to go to Somerset. There's always bright sunshine there. But, Zia, thank you very much. This Sunday, the blessed Carlo Acutis, known as God's influencer, will be canonised, becoming the first millennial saint. Acutis, who died of leukemia aged 15 in 2006, was a talented web designer who used technology to educate others about Eucharistic miracles. He fulfilled the Catholic Church's criteria for sainthood, having 2 miracles attributed to him, one for healing a Brazilian boy in 2020 and another saving a student through his intercession in 2022. His mother, Antonia, called Carlos's life a mystery that shows the power of God. His canonization will be one of the first under Pope Leo XIV. O Father, who has given us the ardent testimony of the young blessed Carlo Acutis, who made the Eucharist the core of his life and the strength of his daily commitments, so that everybody may love you above all else, let him soon be counted among the blessed and the saints in your church. Amen. And it's important to remember that canonization is a statement of heavenly glory. It's not like a knighthood. Sometimes people think the Pope gives it out. It's not. It's a statement of heavenly glory. Anyway, that's all from me. Next, it's Patrick, who is extremely saintly in so many ways. Patrick, what are you going to be talking about this evening?
Well, we've got a big exclusive for you in just a few minutes' time, Jacob. A man who appears to have been a security guard at numerous different migrant hotels has been found to have been posing with guns, look like AK-47s. We're going to be bringing that to you. We're also going to be looking at Yvette Cooper's latest plans, which seem to be an incentive for more illegal migrants to come to the UK. Is she going to let them work? And also, are we going to be accepting Gazans? All of that and much more.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again, very good evening to you. This is your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now, the generally unsettled theme will continue as we go through the rest of today, overnight into tomorrow. Lots more showers to come, even a spell of more persistent rain in the south because there is a front that's pushing its way in from the Atlantic. But generally the story is low pressure firmly in charge, and this will continue to drive some showers in, particularly across northern and western parts as we go overnight. Elsewhere, something a little bit drier and clearer, and under those clear skies, it could be a little bit cooler than it was last night, whilst towns and cities are generally going to hold up in double figures. A few rural spots likely to drop into single digits. And then through tomorrow, well, a big talking point will be the more persistent rain across southern parts. So Devon, Cornwall getting off to a cloudy start, some heavy bursts of rain as this front makes its way in, even across some parts of South Wales. But further east, a drier story, albeit a few showers towards the coast. Also coastal showers for parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England, and also large chunks of Scotland. The showers across Scotland are likely to be heaviest, most frequent in the west, and they could be thundery here. Elsewhere, the showers not as frequent, not as widespread as those that we saw today, and less likely to be heavy, less likely to be thundery. But across southern areas, we do have that frontal system making its way further east, so some rain for many, and it could be quite heavy. There could be some thunder mixed in with it as well. Temperatures are going to be similar to today. We're looking at high teens, low 20s, so feeling warm enough in any sunny breaks, but less so in the unsettled weather. Talking of unsettled weather, Wednesday's looking pretty wet, and it could be quite windy as a spell of rain makes its way across much of the country. Perhaps western Scotland avoiding this and staying largely fine. And then a showery picture on Thursday before a bit of a northwest-southeast split on Friday, wetter towards the northwest. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's our biggest Great British giveaway to date. You could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This 4-berth home from home comes complete with integrated kitchen and bathroom areas and has all of the tech you'd expect from the latest 2025 model. We'll also give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that any adventures you take in your new motorhome are taken in style. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christie's. Tonight, we start tonight's show with a big exclusive. It's a security guard who appears to be working at several different migrant hotels, posing with lethal weapons on social media. It's a remarkable story. I've got all of the detail for you straight after this. And
Do you agree with what your lawyers said, or don't you?
Yes, of course we do.
After Labour put the rights of illegals over the rights of Brits, it's emerged that asylum seekers are being given brand new £300,000 homes, complete with electric car charging ports and underfloor heating. Also...
It looks like the police are trying to cause a scene.
Were the police too heavy-handed with anti-illegal migrant protesters this weekend? Plus...
There's one rule for them and one rule for all of us.
Never gets old, that clip, does it? More trouble for Angela Three Homes Rayner. Huge questions over the value of her properties and where she got the money from. And...
Hey, I'm Jeremy Corbyn, leader of the Labour Party. My pronouns are he, him.
Oh, that's nice. I mean, the Islamic left and the trans rights brigade have finally figured out that they don't like each other, and... Well, a new report says the countryside is racist, but judging by that clip, I'm not too sure it is. On my panel tonight, we've got Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, we've got journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, and commentator James Price, and Greta's not happy.
Slowly, every day, more and more people are waking up and seeing more of the absolute atrocities, the genocide.